everyone. Welcome to Pit Stop's Podium, the RevPartners podcast, where we talk to execs who compete and won, taking their companies from high growth to high scale. My name is Brendan Tollison. I serve as the co-founder and CEO of RevPartners, and I'm delighted to have with me today Jyri Engeström for this episode of Pit Stops to Podium. Welcome, Jyri.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Well, Jyri, we're excited to have you. And so for those in our audience that may not be familiar with who you are, Jyri currently serves as the co-founder at YesVC. And Jyri, I think this would be a great opportunity for you to share a little bit about who YesVC is and ultimately how you came to build this organization.
Yeah, we're a seed stage venture fund based in San Francisco. It's two founders, myself and my partner, Katarina Fake, co-founded Flickr, Hunch, served on Kickstarter, Etsy's chairman, accomplished female entrepreneur from the Valley that a lot of people probably recognize. Myself, I also have a founder background. I started a company called Jyri that was acquired by Google in 2007. It's kind of how I made my first money. Worked at Google, then left Google, started another company called Ditto, which was a mobile social recommendations app that was sold to Groupon in 2012. And so out of those exits, I started investing as an angel for a few years and made some really great bets, including investing in Unity early on. That went on to be at one point valued at about $40 billion and returned a lot of capital for me. So I started shifting from being a founder to being an investor and ended up landing a job at True Ventures, which is one of the kind of original foundational early stage seed funds here in Silicon Valley. They actually backed my second company, and John Callahan, co-founder of True Ventures, was on my board. And so when I started looking at VC, I asked John for advice on which firm I should join. And he's like, oh, why don't you just come work with us? And so that's kind of how I learned about fund management, which I realized was actually not the same as investing as an angel. Because now you're investing other people's money, not your own money. And I worked there for about 4 years basically as a venture partner. Initially, I thought, I'm not going to be a VC. I'll just learn how VCs think, and then that'll enable me to go back and start another company and be a better founder. But as tends to happen, it kind of sucked me in, and I invested in things like a company called ICEYE that's now doing super well. It's a satellite company. That's a True Ventures company that I was on the board of for a while. And a bunch of other companies. And then at one point I was like, well, okay, I think I'm ready to do this as a job, like for real. But entrepreneurs got entrepreneur. And so I'm like, do I want to join a partnership that has been founded by other people where I'm like, maybe, white guy number 7. And I'm like, that could be fun, but what if I just start a new fund on my own and started looking around for somebody to do that with, since I didn't want to do it just by myself, and realized, I had already at that point been investing as an angel together with Katarina for a long time. And she was kind of awesome and really complimentary to me. And it just felt right to look more like the future than the past, I would say, in the sense that, let's do this let's co-found with a female founder who's got a better track record than I do, frankly. This will, help us kind of access the sort of deals that I cannot access, that she can access. And so we started YesVC thinking, we need a name that's short, punchy, people remember. That's also a little bit divisive in the sense that a lot of people are like, well, don't VCs say no all the time? So yeah, we say no, but also importantly, every time I get up in the morning, like just today, I've been talking to a founder. We ended up turning them down. But how do you turn a no that's an authentic no into something that actually moves that founder forward? Because it's really that I don't think that they should be doing that company. So it's about also making sure that whenever you reject people, you actually say something that you think is true, such as, have you considered this other direction? What about doing something that will grow the company faster? Have you thought of this? And so I think a lot of that name is for us about also making sure that we're at the service of the founders that we reject and actually try to help them come up with something better that we could maybe invest in later. anyway, that's the SVC, and that's what we do. We've been doing this fund. We have 3 funds currently, small growth fund and a couple of early stage funds. We're on fund 2 of our, started in 2018. And yeah, funds are doing pretty well. We do a lot of stuff around AI right now. We've done a bunch of stuff around climate investing, and then more classic sort of consumer products, SaaS, stuff like that. It's a generalist VC, so it's really us just figuring out what excites us and then going after the best founders.
Yeah, I love the approach that you take when you talk about the ESVC and ultimately providing you're supporting entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it's. I remember when I was at True, we would look at okay, where do our best deals come from? And for a lot of VCs, that's actually the founders that they back, right? It's like you want the founders that you've invested into, when they see something great, another founder, to refer that new person to kind of like your family, your portfolio, which is true. However, VCs reject 10 times, maybe 100 times more founders than they actually back. So at one point I started thinking what if we, were able to get all those people to also think we're awesome, even though we didn't back them. And that's sort of what led into that thinking around gosh, sometimes the most useful thing you can hear is somebody who really maybe gives you some helpful feedback and says, why don't you change your plan a little bit, right? And so the goal here is that if we're doing our jobs well, then not just the founders we back, but also the founders we end up not backing will think we're awesome enough to respect us or kind of, be able to feed us new deals when they find someone that they think is great.
Yeah. I like it. Yeah, you're taking the long-term approach, whether it's a yes today or maybe yes tomorrow. You're focusing on the relationship, which I think builds trust ultimately with that that entrepreneur. Jyri, before we get into kind of the meat of our conversation, we do have a tradition here at Pistos Podium, and that's to get to know our guests outside of work. So ultimately, we're human beings, not human doers. So what are those passions, hobbies, interests that you have when you're not making those investments?
Yeah, that's such a great way to start. My training was as a sociologist. My parents are academics, and my mom is a sociologist, and my dad is a social scientist. And so when I was really young, I got interested in social networks. And fortuitously, it was around the time that tech enabled, there were the very first early social networks were just getting built out. Things like, nobody remembers these anymore, but Firefly, and later there was Friendster, MySpace. These things eventually evolved into obviously what we now know as Facebook or Meta and Snap and all these things, Instagram. But and one of the funny things I'll tell you is this concept of the soda straw link, which is I use this a lot actually when I think about founders. It's a person that is part of some social network. I don't know, maybe for you, it's your revenue partners crew, but then also is connected to some completely different network. A lot of times it's immigrant founders who, I don't know, they make, let's say you come from India. So, people there, but then you also know people in Silicon Valley or Israel or whatever. And frequently these people actually have an advantage, because they're the soda straw that's connecting together these two separate groups of people that really don't have any other connection between them. And so it enables them to broker information between these two disconnected networks. And sometimes it lets you see an opportunity that you see in Silicon Valley or in Israel or whatever. I come from Finland, so some of my best investments have been companies like, I don't know, Aura, the Ring, Smart Ring. It's a Finnish company that I can then say, hey, these founders are really awesome, but they don't know anyone in Silicon Valley. Let me introduce them to, I don't know, and Mark Benioff ended up investing or whatever. So, it's this is the soda straw link. It's someone who can function as a broker of information between disconnected social networks. And they oftentimes end up being the most valuable people you can know. So just putting that out there there's a lot of fun concepts in sociology that I apply in business that, it's like a whole other, sometimes I've thought, this could be a podcast, or this could even be a book. There's, a lot of fun things like that.
I love
so
it.
that's one of my passions.
Okay. So you got the sociology background with the parents, the academics. All right. So what else you got?
Yeah. I mean, I'm an avid snowboarder. I was just heli skiing in Switzerland, just got back. It was amazing. My brother is a pro skater, a skateboarder. So, he and I get out sometimes still, and, we'll do some sessions together in LA or Barcelona or other awesome spots. So yeah, it's one of the wonderful parts about living in California is that we have access to snow, we have access to the beach, and we have access to, some awesome skate spots. So I try to take advantage of that.
That's great. Let's build off of something you just said, Jyri, around the soda straw concept, and really understanding how that. I guess there are two ways to think about it. One could be in terms of how a entrepreneur thinks about capital. I mean, who should they connect with from a VC perspective? There's also where you sit as the investor. Like, when you think about the soda straw concept, the entrepreneurs that you are talking to, like, what are you looking for to connect those dots? To say, hey, there is a multiplier effect here, or there's an opportunity that this entrepreneur, not only with an idea, but in terms of who they have access to, that makes this really powerful. Is there a framework or a thought process that you think through on that side?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there is. I think every VC has some form of like the prepared mind, the kind of famous Excel idea of, you just get interested in stuff. For example, I'll give you an example. So right now, we're funding a nuclear power company, which is not making electricity; it's making heat, and it's a new kind of concept for how to use nuclear fission. It's very simple. It's you don't need to produce steam or run turbines. You don't even need pumps. So it's kind of a much more simple and frankly more safe way of utilizing nuclear power. But that's come out of, I don't know, at least 5 or 6 years of thinking about energy. It's like it's the biggest thing there is. You think about like how to replace oil. So I don't know. My way of the investments that I love the most are the things where you really get genuinely excited about some space, and then we look for a founder and some edge there. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes we have to start that company on our own. Like this one, it's basically me finding someone and then saying, hey, why don't you do this? I think you're the best person. And then getting them excited to actually, incorporate a new company, and then we fund it. Sometimes I do that myself. Last fund, I think we started 3 companies where, some of them I'm the CEO of initially, and then, I'll find someone to run them. Like primary health, which is, $50 million in revenue or more last year, a couple years old. I started that company, and it's great because we're still the only investors on the cap table, so I think that what we're seeing now, and this is, by the way, for if you're thinking about like what to do and so on, it used to be that VCs would only want you to focus on one thing, like just do one company at a time. Entrepreneurs got to put all their eggs in one basket, etc. I think that's totally wrong. I think the best founders always do multiple things at once. You think about like Elon Musk, like how many companies does he run? Like, Twitter, Tesla, SpaceX. Well, he's got someone CEO running who's excellent running SpaceX. But this is Jack Dorsey. You think about like, I don't know, Jack Abraham, anyone who's a top founder. It's a waste to have them focus on just one company at a time. So I think we're moving from this era of serial entrepreneurs into an era of parallel entrepreneurs. And so I think that works well for Yes. We say yes all the time. It's like, our top founders too, the best founders, we encourage them to start new things on the side. Some of them actually run their own angel funds even. So it's an era where I would just encourage creative people to kind of, expand instead of contracting and, saying no to things. Because you can oftentimes, if you're a great founder, and this is another thing that I say often to our founders is, look, if you're a CEO, you really only have 3 jobs. Like, first job, communicate the vision. And if you do that well, your second task is going to be really easy, which is raise the financing. If you're great at communicating an exciting vision, then it's going to be very easy for you usually to raise financing. And then thirdly, just hire the best people. Now that you know what to do, you've got a vision, and you've just raised the financing, you should be able to go out and hire the best people if you're a great communicator. And that's it. That's what you got to focus on. And if you're doing that job well, then people you hire are going to be able to basically execute on all of the other tasks of the company. And so therefore, you can basically just go and do another company, or, you can be chairman. You don't always need to be the CEO. You don't always need to be operationally doing everything, the full stack. Sometimes it's actually better that you let other people, if you're great at delegating, then, you can actually do multiple companies at once. And I think this is a new phenomenon that we're going to see more and more during this decade, where, some of the very best founders, they're going to be running multiple companies simultaneously.
Yeah, to your point, it is counterintuitive. I didn't necessarily disagree with it. I think the common objection, at least that I would hear, is like focus, and the lack of focus will cause you to implode if you're trying to do too many things at once. But I think your rebuttal to that is that whole, hey, empower and delegate. If you do those 3 things well, you talk about vision casting, funding, and rallying the people around you, then you're actually able to do both well.
Yeah, it's not always the case. There's always exceptions to the rule. But I used to very much believe that you had to focus and do one company at a time. And, I constrained myself, as a founder. Some of my best ideas I didn't pursue because I thought I shouldn't do that. I thought it was morally, somehow suspect because I was running a company, right? And I look back and I'm like, wow, well, that was kind of a dumb thing to do. I could have easily, gotten involved, or at least angel invested, or put together. And, some of my own, best investments, my own companies returned money to me. But it's another thing. Like, if you're a founder, you should probably be very actively investing, advising other founders. And it took me a while to realize this. And I have certainly made more money from my tiny angel investments into some companies that got really massive than I have from my own companies, even though I made money from them too. But, ultimately their exits were, an order of magnitude smaller than some of these other ones. And so, and I've learned so much from those other founders. And it's sometimes, so it's all really about building a network, in the sense that it also makes it easier for you to hire. You can actually go and work in some of those companies. Like, I went and I was the head of product at my friend's company for a while. And then I switched out. So, this idea of things being pretty fluid, and you being able to be an investor, be a founder, maybe even run a fund, kind of do a lot of things simultaneously. If you look at the very top, most successful people in Silicon Valley, look at a Reid Hoffman, look at an Elon Musk, look at Sam Altman. All these people do many things simultaneously. And so I just think that's really, and it also makes things more fun. You're basically accessing, coming back to that social networking idea of the soda straw link, they're injecting themselves in multiple information flows at once, which gives them advantage, because now they know what's going on in AI. And they also know what's going on, I don't know, in the world of SPACs. Like, when SPACs became a thing, you saw, like, I don't know, Reid Hoffman, Mark Pincus, Chamath, like, they were the first to start doing SPACs, and that's usually when you have the biggest advantage, right? The people who come in later are just going to be basically learning from you, copying you, etc., but not necessarily, they don't have as much upside. And so that's another thing is like, usually who's first to a new thing, it's someone that is so well connected that they've been able to spot it before others. And obviously, for a venture capitalist, that's sort of what it's all about, right? You want to find the opportunity before your competitors do. So, like we live in Paris. I have a house in Helsinki in Finland. My home base is San Francisco. But nowadays, even though I invest very early stage, I find that it's possible to stay in the information flow in those other places while being here because everything is online, and allows me to make these connections. Like I was mentioning, for instance, for this company, Aura, the smart ring, or, like now we're building this nuclear power company. It's just possible to get a lot more done if you allow yourself the freedom to basically not limit yourself by thinking that you have to focus on something that you really probably don't actually need to focus on. So,
yeah, I think that
I've learned over time.
We could talk about this for a long time. I love it's an invitation, I think, for people to think differently, and it's always helpful to see practical examples of how others in the Valley are doing that. It encourages me, even as a founder, and thinking through what we've built 3 companies in 2 years. And sometimes it feels like that's a lot, but to your point, if you do it the right way, yeah, exactly. Well, Jyri, I really appreciate you stopping by. As we kind of go to the final lap, if our audience wants to engage with the SVC or learn, more from you, what's the next step they can take?
Yeah, just hit me up on Twitter. It's at Jyri at JYRI, or email us at partners@yes.vc, partners@yes.vc. We read everything. We can't respond to everything, but we read everything. So look forward to hearing from you guys. And thanks so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, likewise, Jyri. I really do appreciate your perspective. You certainly bring a unique background, and congrats on your success. And I'm confident it will only continue in light of what we discussed today. So thank you so much.
Thanks.